Good afternoon and welcome to another episode of Unscripted and Unchained RPG Review. I am DM Bluddworth, and as you can see by the graphics, today's video I'm going to be taking a look at the referee book for Swords and Wizardry. This is the newest release of the collector's edition, and this is my first look at the referee's book. So, without further ado, let's jump right into it. Just real quick, so this is about the size of them. They're fairly short. So a 3 booklet set plus a number of accessories came along with this Kickstarter. So really enjoying the various elements that came with this collector's edition and the Kickstarter as a whole. So without further ado, let's start taking a look at the referee's book. Okay, so here we are with the cover. So the referee's book is 58 pages, kind of small, which is always good because that means that it's not going to be very rules heavy. In case I haven't said this earlier on, I mean the principal author or the author is Matthew J. Finch, put out by Frog God Games. I'm not going to spend too much time with this table of contents because I am going to go through the entire booklet anyway. And one of the surprises that I had is that this referee's book is not very rules heavy. That you need to have it at your side while you're playing the game. I mean, there's a couple of pages that would be something that you could print out and have on the side, but the rest of the book is all or mostly about preparation for the game session. So that was one thing that I was surprised by. They go off here with basically just the general tone of this book is that rules are just guidelines. There is not a rule for everything. When in doubt, make a ruling. So basically advice for the referee to conduct their game. Swords of Wizardry is a free-form role-playing game, meaning that there are not very many rules. The referee is responsible for handling situations not covered by the rules, making for evaluations of what the characters do, and deciding what happens as a result. This is not a game in which the players are against the referee or vice versa, even though the referee is responsible for creating tricky traps and dangerous situations and running the monsters and their foes the characters will encounter during the game. In fact, the players and the referee cooperate with each other to create a fantasy epic, with the referee creating the setting and the players developing the story of the heroes. So yeah, I mean the idea that role-playing games, have a real adversarial aspect to them between the DM or the GM or wherever you want to call and the players is really not something that that I've certainly experienced, and never something that I've ever seen condoned or touted as being the way to play a tabletop RPG, whether it was an old school or modern day. Designing a dungeon adventure. So, and a lot of this book is actually focused on that, which is what really surprised me. I was kind of expecting it to take a lot of the rules that were talked about in the player's book and then going a little bit deeper into them. That's not what this book does. So a pleasant surprise. So they get into a sample map and talking about creating wandering monsters, creating maps, utilizing the various aspects that you would see here, and really detailing, this is not just lines on a map. This is not just this isn't just rooms. There are other layers of complexity going on in here So you're not just walking into a square room like room 22 here and saying, well, it's roughly 30 feet by 30 feet and leaving it at that. There's a description, there's an atmosphere that's going on, there might be something about that door that is an interesting aspect that might have to be interacted with differently than some other door in the other place. And they kind of go through that and kind of developing the map to be much more than just the space that the players are walking into. And they start off with a wandering monsters table just to kind of show. And when you look at these things here, you'll start to see that there's a connection or a rationale behind them. All right, and that gets to the ecology of a dungeon should make sense, and they kind of indirectly do that without specifically coming out and saying, you know, you need to keep this in mind. You know, they do talk about the difficulty level of certain monster collections, and I'll show you that when they get to that point. So yeah, you're going to look at those and see, well, I can take a couple from here and a couple from there, but for the most part, they don't directly come out and say, well, you would have this but not that. And we'll move on forward. So going into more details, so filling in the map key, here are a few brainstorming ideas for things that can be found in the dungeon. Pit traps, teleports, statues that might animate and attack or reward certain actions, altars, arrow traps, pools, possibly with magical waters, magic, and so on. And then that's like I was mentioning, a door might not always be just a door. There might be a lot more to it, or it could simply be just a door. All right, so be a little bit creative and imaginative, and you know, throw some curveballs at the players as well. That's not adversarial, that's challenging them. Summary of important dungeon facts. So secret doors, and this is one of those things that I was talking about, that, you know, this could be something that you print out and keep on the side along with you, and you know, actually this could be something that could be on the DM's screen rather than just the attack tables. And I'll do a separate video on the screen itself as well as the rest of the things that came in the accessory pack. But this is something that I would certainly print out and keep by my side as a dungeon master, just to remind myself, you know, what is detection of secret doors, listening doors, opening doors, and traps and pits. One of the things I found interesting here with traps and pits is that there's a chance that you don't trigger them, and I never really thought about that much. It's been a long time since I've actually utilized them, in a sense that, well, the trap might not get tripped when this person walks by. And you would do it as a separate roll for each character as they pass by, so it's not always the first person that falls into the pit trap. You know, it might be the third person in line that triggers the trap doors that drops them down into the pit trap. So that's something I haven't really considered that much in a long time, and so this refreshed my memory that yeah, not all traps need to get triggered just by, you know, walking past them, walking on them, or whatever. So monsters and in the dungeon, and then there's dungeon levels. So if you're doing a dungeon level 1, then you would roll here, and it would say 3d6 class A creatures. You might have 3d6 class B creatures and such. You might make several different rolls on this table to see what are some of your various random encounters. generating encounters for dungeon levels 6 through 10. So the first column is 1 through 5, then 6 through 10. Challenge levels, and here you have the list of monsters for the challenge levels. So you would roll on a CLA, which is the lowest level. You would roll, well, is it going to be a giant rat from Class A, or is it going to be kobolds from Class A? Class B, they're going to be goblins, all right, on a D20 roll. Challenge level 1, you have these that you can roll through and see, all right, so all of these may possibly be within the dungeon. And you can kind of see that they sort of make sense. I mean, you might not have wandering dwarves and elves in the same dungeon that you have orcs and piercers, but it starts to categorize them so that you can then more carefully construct what your wandering monster table might actually be. "12, 14 to 16, 17. 17 must be the highest. Yeah, so 17. So a Demon Prince, Orcus Elemental, 16 hit die, an Iron Golem, Liches, Purple Worms, or Titans. All right, so you can go way high in here. I'm assuming that vampires are probably somewhere in kind of close to the top, but probably somewhere in the upper middle levels. Very good artwork again. Mixing monsters in an encounter. So once again, not all orc bands are just going to be exclusively orcs or kobolds, or mix it up a little bit. You might have a hobgoblin with several goblins as his minions. You might have an ogre that is leading a bunch of orcs, or you could reverse that and have a bunch of orcs utilizing a pair of ogres as their hired muscle or whatever. So you can mix and match some of these wandering monsters just to change it up a little bit. Then they go on to wilderness adventures. So that's all dungeon. Wilderness adventures, you have chances of getting lost, vehicle movement rates, and again, these are the kind of charts that you might have on the side by you. Encounter tables for wilderness, and I like to create encounter tables that are specific to the particular adventure that they're actually going on, and not keeping it completely random like this, but maybe breaking it down a little bit differently. Like you can have these very generic ones that they have here for the type of terrain, but then when you get into the more specific, that's where you can start breaking it down even further. So flying creature encounters. I mean, you might not want a level 1 party coming across wyverns, for instance. So that you're going to, alter, unless you want to give the player characters a chance to escape. And so on. So just more kinds of encounters that can be had. And again, this is all pre-planning, so this isn't stuff that you necessarily need to have by your side as a GM. Types of dragons to be encountered, terrain-specific encounters. And so here we go. So they do eliminate some creatures, obviously, from certain terrains. Special combat rules. So in this case, he does spend a lot of time with mass combat and how those systems, these are, in many cases, optional rules. and mass combat being one of them is something. So I like the fact that they do have a whole section on mass combat, and they do deal with every element of it, which is really good as well. So you have the whole idea of broken units and modifiers and siege combat, heavy catapults, and it's got me thinking. It's like, when a player character group, an adventure party, uh, goes to a broken down keep in order to investigate something or look for treasure or whatever, a lot of times, you don't really think that, there might be some siege weapons laying around, in the field around this, formerly attacked and destroyed or partially destroyed keep that might still be functional and might actually come into use in some way, perhaps after the player characters rush out of the place. Maybe they're being chased by a huge horde of of angry goblins, and so they go to these battlements and help thwart or fend off a large horde of goblins or whatever comes after them. But this is for active sieges as well, so which you could have players actually participate in, which would be actually a very interesting scenario for the players to be involved in a siege of a castle that they're trying to overtake. Maybe they were hired to do that kind of a thing, and it's not something that I have seen often used in in modules that are that are pre-written modules and such. So again, it gives you opportunities to go into areas of gameplay and types of scenarios that you might not have used before. Aerial combat and mobility, aerial missile fire. I know there was like a fumble chart for aerial as well. Aerial critical hits. Ship combat, which I am certainly going to get involved with. Then we have ship types. Combat, so for ship combat, you have combat ramming, catapult fire, from ship to ship, grappling, boarding. So if you're looking to do like a pirate adventure, that's certainly something that you can work on as well. There's a section on treasures, and they have one thing I found unique is that they have treasure like a swap out. So for every 100 gold pieces, you could trade out for a minor gem, or jewelry. For every 1,000, you could trade out for a medium magic item. For every 5,000, you can trade out for a major magic item. So that's an interesting thing to do. And of course, you're doing this as a GM creating the adventure. And they give you these various treasure charts as well. Much of this all done in pre-planning, so it's very much different than having an advanced Dungeons and Dragons DM's guide sitting next to you to deal with rules lawyering. Just more magic items and such, and they go into the magic item descriptions, high level characters and their strongholds, and you get into high level play at this point. Hirelings, which I've become much more interested in using, especially if I'm playing with I'm DMing a single player with a single character. and then they have to rely on these expert hirelings often in order to continue doing the challenges of the adventures. So there you pretty much have it. I mean, it's a it's a very short book. Surprisingly, that it's not filled with a bunch of content for rules looking up and such. It's just meant primarily for setting up before actual play. So I like the fact that it has how to build a map and to make that map an interesting place for the players to engage with. For the dungeon crawls, it has a big section on mass combat, which I really like as well. And then a couple of panels that are just good to print out from the PDF and have on the side. So when you are running a game, that will excuse me, that will enhance the use of the DM screen. So once again, thanks for joining. I hope you like this video. This will be combined up as a playlist for the rest of the books as I'm going through Swords and Wizardry, the collector's edition. So I hope you're enjoying them as a whole as well. And, once again, give it a thumbs up if you liked it. Leave a comment or a message if you have anything else that you want me to take a look at. And subscribe if you haven't subscribed. And I look forward to seeing you on a gaming screen sometime soon. So enjoy your weekend and stay safe out there and have a good rest of your afternoon. Take care.